A tale is told about a monster who was having the time of his life, creating havoc and threatening the very existence of the kingdom itself. He had, in fact, become quite skilled in his acts of terror, and his unchecked power left many of the kingdom dwellers with little hope that someone would rise to conquer this beast. Well, as the battles raged on, a famed monster slayer finally arrived in the kingdom. But he quickly grew disheartened when he realized that many of the very people who said they wanted to be rid of the monster were actually nurturing the beast. Well, if the monster slayer was to succeed in this kingdom, as he had done elsewhere, he would need to convince all the people of the realm to first call out that monster by name, and then to stop feeding the monster. And the monster's name? Fear. My friends, in Matthew's gospel today, as Jesus is about to send out his disciples on mission, he admonishes them, have no fear. The first thing they needed to do, the one thing they needed to leave behind, in other words, the monster they needed to stop feeding, if they truly were to be courageous bearers of the good news in God's kingdom, was the monster fear. And so do we. But oh my, this monster has a voracious appetite and is not easy to tame. I wonder if those first disciples had the same reaction I do when I hear Jesus today tell us, oh, well, have no fear. My reaction? Are you serious? Have you looked around at all to see what's happening or what we're up against? I think most of us battle a two-headed monster called fear. First of all, fear arising out of things we actually have experienced. And secondly, fear of those things that we easily imagine happening. The monster fear is one of the strongest motivators in human life. But, truth be told, it mostly pushes us into wrong actions or freezes us into inaction. Each of us faces fear. And how each of us faces fear has a lot to do with basically our overall temperament and the experiences we've had. Traumatic events early in one's life connect pathways of fear into our bodies and brains. Feelings of insecurity can intensify our worries and anxieties. Our lack of control over so many of life's events is a breeding ground for fear. But the promise of the Lord to drop down into the middle of our fears and to walk with us as we face them is the grace to which we must cling. Jesus knew that the many-headed monster called fear would be one of our greatest opponents in living the kingdom life that he entrusts to us. And that's why, I suspect, he tells us, do not be afraid 21 times. 21 times throughout the Gospels. Do not be afraid. We hear in the Word today that God cares for us more than the sparrows, numbering the hairs on our heads, whether those numbers be great or small, calling us beloved daughters and sons. See, God is more than capable of equipping us with courage and compassion sufficient to the challenges and the opportunities of each day. But even the Lord's power, even the Lord's grace and compassion and courage, they are not enough if we continue in our desire to feed the monster called fear. One of my favorite contemporary poets, Denise Levertov, speaks, I think, so beautifully to the gift of just simply allowing ourselves, when we are locked in the grip of the monster fear, allowing ourselves to simply be held tightly by God's embrace. The poem is entitled The Avowal. As swimmers dare to lie face to the sky, and water bears them. As hawks rest upon air, and air sustains them, so would I learn to attain free fall and float into Creator Spirit's deep embrace. My friends, Jesus invites us once again to stop feeding the monster fear. And may each of us, in the words of Denise Levertov, learn to attain free fall and simply float into Creator Spirit's deep embrace.